Jacques Delisle's life sentence for murdering his wife sent shockwaves through legal circles across the country. He's the first judge in Canadian history to ever be convicted of first-degree murder. So it's no surprise the case caught the eye of a lawyer in Toronto who's made history himself. James Lockyer rights wrongs and changes lives. His high-profile work has helped exonerate more than 20 people wrongly convicted of serious crimes. Some who spent decades falsely accused, like Stephen Truscott. The attorney who made his name taking on judges is now fighting for one, Jacques Delisle.
This is what I had thought was the angle.
With the help of his team at the Association in Defense of the Wrongfully Convicted, Lockyer pored over the trial testimonials,
of the head,
combed through the forensic evidence, and interviewed Delisle and his family.
So it's coming in like that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering why you want to take on this case.
I try and take on cases where I think that the people I'm helping are genuinely innocent. And I think Monsieur Delisle is genuinely innocent.
You've made a career out of proving judges wrong. How do you feel about defending one now?
It really doesn't bother me at all. You know, one of the things that I can say that to judges even now, that you could be the next one. There are no potential exceptions to people who can be wrongly convicted.
Right or wrong, here's the case that convicted Delisle. For the Crown, their forensic case seemed as basic as connecting the dots. First, the trajectory of the bullet that killed Nicole Rainville. The Crown said it took a straight path from her temple through her skull. They would determine the shot was fired at an angle of 30 degrees, consistent with someone holding a gun to the front of her head. These images show the Crown's team of experts demonstrating how they thought it happened. Then the next piece of the puzzle, that black smudge found on her left hand. The Crown argued she got the burn as she raised her hand to defend herself from her husband. The pieces of evidence seemed to fit Loctite. However, the defense presented a completely different scenario. On the surface, the defense theory of how Rainville shot herself did seem far-fetched. Their one expert said the right-handed woman, who was partially paralyzed on her right side, used her left hand to grip the gun like this, upside down, using her middle finger to pull the trigger. The Crown said this was unrealistic, and the jury agreed. But Lockyer says juries are often swayed by faulty science.
He was convicted on what I would consider to be very poor forensic evidence, and that's a common cause of wrongful convictions.
Two dramatically different versions of the death of Nicole Rainville. So we took the evidence to our own independent forensic experts. 3 different experts in 3 different cities. They spent days poring over trial transcripts and photos of the evidence. None of them were consulted on this case before now. None of them discussed the evidence with each other.
So this is the trigger figure.
Dr. Peter Markestein is the former chief medical examiner of Manitoba, a forensic pathologist who's worked on cases of the wrongfully convicted before. He was shocked when he read the Crown's theory.
There is zero forensic evidence to support that. This is the bullet, this is flattened, right?
Rather than start here with the bullet, Markestein starts here with the entry wound. An angled shot would have left burn marks on the victim's skin and hair, but he says there are none. So he concludes the shot wasn't fired at a 30-degree angle, more like a perpendicular or 90-degree angle, consistent with the suicide theory.
There is no doubt from a scientific point of view that this was a perpendicular held gun at the time of firing.
That seems clear-cut.
It is, yes. But it may be technical to a jury. That's the problem. Right.
But if the gun were at a 90-degree angle pointed at her temple, how then did the bullet end up in the back of her skull? Easy, says Liam Hendricks. He's a ballistics and firearms specialist recognized by the International Criminal Court in The Hague.
This was a contact shot that struck hard bone. The bullet would have immediately started to fragment and deform upon impact with the skull. And so
he says the bullet deflected as it hit inside the victim's skull, leaving a telltale trail of lead fragments.
There was X-ray evidence which indicated what's known as a lead snowstorm, and that's the fragmentation of the projectile. The X-ray showed the lead snowstorm running roughly parallel across the head from point A to point B where they came to rest.
He says it's evident the bullet went from the left temple, ricocheted off the right side of the head, and ended up at the back of the head. Once again, consistent with the defense, contradicting the Crown.
That's at the back of the head. And here we see.
So why did the Crown experts interpret the evidence differently?
Well, there's obviously always human error, and that can always play a role in any type of examination or examinations of this type in this type of complex case.
That leaves one key piece of evidence, that telltale black powder burn on the victim's hand. To learn more about that, we asked Dr. Michael Schrum to unlock the secrets of the smudge.
The powder on the hands and significance of that, that's what I'm trying to understand. Can we take a look at that?
Sure.
Schrum is an expert in forensic pathology who leads the autopsy team at the Health Sciences Centre in London, Ontario. He's testified for the defense in other murder cases.
Okay, so again,
What do you see there?
okay, so again, we have this larger area of soot or smoke that's been expelled from with the bullet.
This powerful post-mortem image is the key, he says, to understanding what really happened to Nicole Rainville. He said if she had put her hand up to defend herself from the gun, as the Crown said she did, the powder burns would have been on a different part of her palm. These burns, in this pattern, indicate she was likely holding the gun herself.
This does appear to be consistent with a self-inflicted wound.
It appears to be, yes.
Well, that's significant.
Yes, it is.
I mean, that's the difference between guilt and innocence.
That's right.
All of our experts agree, based on the entry wound to her skull, the bullet's trajectory, and the soot pattern on her hand, the Crown's forensic testimony, as presented at trial, is dead wrong.
Because it was the Crown's job to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it was a case of murder. You have doubts.
Yes, I do. There's reasonable doubt here.
Reasonable doubt about the guilt of a man who's already spent 3 years of a life sentence behind bars for murder. So we presented the questions raised about the Crown's forensic evidence to Charles Levasseur, the Crown attorney who originally took on the case.
You cannot do evidence picking. I mean,
right.
You have to consider the whole story.
Levasseur remains convinced DeLille pulled the trigger because of the compelling motive, the mistress and the ailing wife.
He didn't want to have this burden on his back at his retirement. He wants to travel. So that's my theory, and that's what I think, and that's what I still think.
And that hasn't changed?
No, absolutely not.
And it's not just Levasseur's opinion. The Quebec Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court let DeLille's conviction stand. Despite all those setbacks, Judge DeLille still has faith in the law.
I'm confident in the justice system.
When we come back, one last desperate attempt to prove his innocence.